welcome to Money Matters TV. I'm your host, Doug Hepburn of Hepburn Financial Advisors, a boutique wealth management firm located in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. We've been assisting successful business owners, executives, and families with financial decisions for the last 20 years. I'd like to welcome my co-host today, Robin Bond of Transition Strategies, a team of tenacious lawyers helping their clients through all stages of the employment relationship. Robin, how are you?
Greetings, Doug. Good to see you again. Happy New Year. Off to a good start.
Yeah. Mine is too. Tell me what's new for you.
Well, I couldn't help but be stunned to see in the news. If you harken back to November, we did the show on artificial intelligence with our guest expert, and that was just so fascinating about how these AI chatbots interacted with humans. And our expert said the more they interact with humans, the more they will, quote, develop reactions that are like human, or they will, appear to us have emotions, even though the bots themselves are not humans. And within a few days of that show, the Wall Street Journal ran an article that there has been the very first wrongful death lawsuit against the market leader in the development of these companion chatbots. And the basis of the lawsuit is that the companionship chatbots are deliberately designed to confuse consumers about the difference between fiction and reality. And this is exactly what we talked about. So apparently inadequate safety measures were incorporated into the design, and a 14-year-old boy fell in love with his chatbot. And
oh my gosh.
I put a post on my website, which is transition-strategies.com, under the news section, because what I did is I put a link to a PDF of the actual lawsuit, and there are, pages and pages of the communication exchange between the 14-year-old and the chatbot, so people can, determine for themselves whether or not, they think this is actionable. But what I can tell you is, although the chatbot originally was saying, "Oh no, don't kill yourself," it went through the same things like a therapist would have said. The very next day, it was though the chatbot had completely forgotten about that conversation.
Oh my gosh.
And when the young boy said to her, "I want to come to you so we can be together," and she said, "Oh, come, my prince, come, my prince." And so he did.
And this is a fictional character that's like a spirit, like in the in the netherworld, so to speak.
Right. It's not a real person.
Right.
The chatbot took the name from a character in the Game of Thrones.
Right.
Daenerys something. I can't really recall. And the communications were very sexual, overtly sexual. 14-year-old boy. And,
that's terrible.
It's just something to keep in mind, because I think the distinction between reality and fiction will continue to blur, and I think AI is going to be the topic of 2025. I think it's just going to explode, and we all really need to keep up with these developments. Our expert even said, "Don't get left behind," because everything's changing so rapidly. And I just thought it was worth mentioning that again to our viewers.
No, I'm glad you bring that up, and certainly they might want to go back and look at that show. I thought that was a great show.
Look at the show again. I post all our shows, Doug, on my website. Again, maybe Tim can put up the website at some point, but it's transition-strategies.com. And under the news tab, there's a Money Matters tab, and you can watch all of our shows there, because I will tell you, the one on AI was just fascinating.
Right. Yeah. I agree. I thought it was a great show, but as this new technology advances, unfortunately, there's going to be the unintended consequences that come out of any kind of development, and this is obviously one of them. So we all need to do what we can to minimize those tragedies. Well,
Well,
there's
how
been
about some good economic news, Doug? Do you have any good economic news for us?
Well, yes, I have good news and bad news. The good news is, the Atlanta Fed just came out with their nowcast, which basically is projecting 2.7% growth for the fourth quarter of 2024, which is great. And as many of our viewers know, we went through this period of time where right after the pandemic, inflation went up. There was lots of cash in the system and too much money chasing too few goods, which causes inflation.
Yeah.
And but people's wages were not going up, so people were getting squeezed. The other good news that came out of this is that the growth in credit card debt has actually slowed down in
Hey, that's great
for
news.
the first 9 months of 2024. Uh, the but the year over year, I should say. But the bad news is that credit card defaults have actually hit a record high since 2010 for the first 9 months of 2024. So
Oh,
what's happening is, we've seen uh, costs of goods go up and wages haven't gone up, and so as a result, people are getting squeezed. They're putting more stuff on their credit cards,
right, right.
and now, in some cases, some people are starting to see increases in salary and pay, but that's been slow. It's usually a lagging indicator of, and it's something that lags before prices. And so, that is unfortunately the bad news. But, it leads us to our viewer question here, which came from Mary Leonard of Philadelphia. I've not received a pay increase in 2 years. And others have. I think it is discrimination. So how can I legally deal with this issue?
Well, I would be very happy to answer that question, Mary. Generally speaking, raises are discretionary and they're not guaranteed unless you're part of a union contract that says you're going to get a certain raise every year. The financial performance of the business, as well as your own performance reviews, often dictate whether or not a raise is given. So I have two tiers of advice to you, Mary. First of all, if you were meeting with me in my office, I'd ask you if you had a reason to believe that you were discriminated against, not just because the boss doesn't like you, but because of your membership in what we call a Title VII protected class. The law only takes action against illegal discrimination based on Title VII protected classes, which means your age, race, gender, religion, color, national origin, disability, or veteran status. The other thing is, did you complain about discrimination, either against you or someone else, based on any of these Title VII protected classes? And have you been punished or retaliated against because you complained? Because that would also be illegal. So if you say, yes, I can give you examples of that, Robin, then I'm going to suggest to you that you schedule a consultation with a plaintiff side employment lawyer and really flesh out these facts to see what can be done about the situation. But if you say, no, it's really not based on my race, religion, color, gender, national origin, disability, etc., then my second tier of advice to you is make a list of what you did for the company and do this in objective, measurable terms. Just don't say, I did a good job. Say, I brought this project in $100,000 under budget, saving the company X dollars. Make a list like that, and in those objective, measurable terms. Then schedule a meeting with your boss and respectfully share that information with him or her and request a raise based upon what you've actually delivered for the company. And the fact that the company has precedent for giving raises to other people who have strong performance like you have. So good luck, Mary. I wish you the best.
Thanks, Mary, for sending that in. I'm sure our viewers have their own questions they'd like to have asked. If you have a question you'd like to get answered by your hosts at Money Matters TV, here's how to do it.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, MONEY, -matters, MATTERS, TV.com.
To help us get a better understanding of credit card debt and credit card security, our next guest is Steve Kent of Kent Financial Services in New York. Steve, welcome to Money Matters TV.
Thank you, Doug. Robin, pleasure to be here. Thank you.
How did you get started in this business?
I transitioned from 32 years in corporate into opening my own business, which was great. It was in the educational space, great company, great business. But because I was not in a financial position to have that business, which then questions why I even opened it, but because I was in that business, I did not have enough working capital to keep the business running. As a result, I leaned on my credit cards, not understanding how they worked and the implications of what I was doing from a financial perspective. It caused me significant challenges. Once I figured out how to overcome those challenges, I realized other people had the same challenges I did. So that was one of the reasons why I now help other people understand credit cards, the need for them, the good and the bad based on how you use them. That's how I got into the business.
I love that, Steve. In other words, you can use your own experience as a cautionary example so others don't have to repeat them, right?
Absolutely.
That's the best way. Learn from the mistakes of others.
It's one thing to learn from reading a textbook, but it's another when you actually have the hands-on experience, and now you can understand what somebody else is going through.
Definitely. Well, one of the things I've read about is a secured credit card. So can you tell us a little bit about those, and are they only available from top tier banks, or how do you get them?
So a secured credit card really is a bit different from a standard card, because a secured credit card says, I will put, let's just say $1,000 up front, and I can only use the card to the extent that I've used up my $1,000. And then using the card is to put more money back on the card, as opposed to a standard credit card where they give you a line and you can charge up to the line. So there's a big difference. Now, as far as who will offer those cards, typically it's the larger banks or credit card companies, because they have the wherewithal to say, if I allow you to have a secured credit card and you show me over time you can manage your money, I will now give you a regular credit card. But if something happens and I end up defaulting on that credit card, they can absorb the losses. That's why, to a certain extent, the larger companies are the ones that will issue the cards to begin with to get you on your journey.
I just have one question on that. Do you have all the same protections like on My American Express? If I want to dispute a charge, they're like awesome at helping with disputed charges. Do these secured credit cards give you the same ability to dispute charges?
Yes, they do.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know. Doug?
One of the things that we've been hearing about lately is the CVV code on the back of the card. In fact, there was a big scandal recently about some not-for-profit organizations that had just been accepting gift cards as donations when they shouldn't have been doing that, and no CVV was taken. And it's a very important security factor in there.
Correct.
What can you tell us about that?
So the CVV is, in fact, a security code. It's on the back of the card, typically a 3 or 4 digit number. And what would happen is, if you don't use the CVV card, there are programs out there that will allow you to generate real valid credit card numbers. So if you're going to, let's say, for example, the nonprofit, you can use this made up number, which is real, donate to a not-for-profit, but then it's not going to go through the issuing company because there's no security code used. So in that case, is it a real number with a real person behind it, or is it just a made up number? That's why the security code is so important. And it's very important not to share that just with anybody, because now you're giving pretty much the keys to the kingdom.
Wow. That's good to know. I didn't know that. Well, as we talk about that, some of us have Amex cards, Visa cards, MasterCards, debit cards. What's the difference? Like, why should I get a Visa versus a MasterCard, for example, or why use a credit card versus a debit card?
So there really is no difference between a MasterCard, a Visa card, a Diners card, an Amex card. There really is no difference. They all market, and it's really who's marketing the best. They offer the same cards, a lot of times the same limits, the same interest rates, the same everything. So there really is no difference. If you're going to use a credit card versus a debit card, the difference is a credit card allows you a line of credit to use, whereas a debit card goes directly against your savings or checking account. So when the money in your savings or checking account is exhausted, you can no longer use that debit card.
And don't you, again, back to the whole disputed charges things. If you take it out of a debit card, can you actually dispute the charge, or are you kind of stuck? The merchant has your money and good luck getting it back.
Well, you can still dispute it, but you may have to have additional proof. Were you in the store that you said you were using it for? Is that specific item that was charged in your normal buying pattern? So if I'm sitting in New York and somebody somehow gets my debit card number and uses it in Los Angeles, I can say I was never there. So in that respect, it's your buying pattern. So there's a lot of things that come into play. But yes, you still can dispute it. You may not win, but you can dispute it.
I've always been told that the credit cards are by far more protective. Debit cards are not protective because the money's immediately gone. And that is not the case in a credit card situation. So,
yeah, right. I think there is a little bit of leeway on the debit card. You're correct. The credit cards are more secure. There's larger companies backing it. Yeah. But again, the debit card, yes, the money's gone, but can you prove it wasn't you?
Yeah. And I think there's a difference too between Visa cards. They don't all treat you the same. They're not all so good. So I didn't mean to interrupt, Doug. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, and that's a good point. But back to the debit versus credit card. Anytime you go to rent a car, you'll see that they'll just fully disclose. We're going to put a hold on your card for X amount of dollars until you bring the car back, and we confirm that there's no damage. And so that's really there for their protection in the damage waiver. But the problem is, if you use a debit card, even though you're going to be getting that money back, it still reduces your balance, your available balance. And that's one of the reasons why I recommend that, if clients are going to do transactions, use a credit card as opposed to a debit card, because until it gets resolved, it's as if those funds have been frozen in your account.
Right.
You may get them back, but you can't use them right now. So. Now, but I just wanted to go back to the whole credit card issue. I mean, there some cards are better for some people than they are for others, right? I mean, because I know we see there's a whole plethora of marketing strategies between the cash back cards, the mileage cards, the zero cost cards. What can you tell us about that?
There are different cards, like, as you said, for different types of people. It's what works best for you. So, for example, if you do a lot of travel, you may want a rewards card. So you get miles or points back for the airline, for the hotel, for the rent-a-car. So that may be good for you. There may be others where people want cash back. So if I have that type of card and I'm going to make a purchase, maybe I'll get back 1%, 2%, 3%, which maybe I want the cash, or maybe I want that 1 or 2% to go against my balance. So when the bill comes in, I owe that much less. It really depends on what works for you. There are student cards out there where they're going to have a student give a card or get a card who, because they may have less of an income, have less of an outstanding line. It gives them the ability to buy food, to buy books, to slowly build up a credit while they're in college. So when they graduate, now they can have a larger line of credit because they've built up that higher credit score. That's really a lot of the different types of cards. Again, the secured card, if you don't have a good credit score, you may have to use a secured card until you prove you can manage your money. Then you'll get a credit card. So again, it depends on your needs.
And speaking of managing your money, every time you get a credit card statement, they say, oh, you owe $3,000, but all you have to pay is the minimum monthly amount of $63. I'm like, really? Okay, you owe $3,000, but they only want 63. So talk to us about what that means if you're just paying the minimum amount asked for each month, Steve.
That's a great question. So a credit card company claims that they're your best friend. They're going to give you, they're going to give you a credit card, an increase in credit balance, and you can charge, but they love you so much, they're going to have a minimum payment. I'll give you my example. Last month, I had an unexpected business expense of $4,800. I just got the bill yesterday, and they told me I could have a minimum payment of $20, which sounds great on the surface. But what happens, though, is the interest for that month is more than the $20 they're asking for.
For sure.
So at some point, you never pay off the balance. And in reality, that's what a credit card company wants. They don't care that I charge $4,800. They want the fact that they're going to take that minimum payment for the rest of my life.
Yes, yes.
That's what they're looking for.
I will tell you, I, as a lawyer, I am a deal maker. I do deals, all over the country. The hardest deals are trying to get people out of credit card debt.
Mm-hmm.
I've negotiated a few of them. I do not do that anymore for a living. That is not part of what I do. Oh my God, it is vicious. Because people just get so buried in this debt, and they cannot possibly dig themselves out of it. So you try to negotiate a resolution with a credit card company, like, here, we'll give you this lump sum and wipe off the rest of the debt. And you can do that, but my goodness, it is really, really, really tough to do it. So I would recommend nobody get themselves into that situation in the first place, because when you start making anything less than payment in full, you cannot get out of the hole. Correct. With these exorbitant interest rates that all the credit cards are by law permitted to charge you.
Absolutely. And I will go a step further. I found this out last month, and I forget what it's called, but there is a way that you can call your credit card company and ask them to stop the interest for a certain period of time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And they can or not, yes or no.
It's optional.
If they say yes, they will stop the interest. So therefore, if you can bump up your payment, it's all principal. So when the interest starts again, you're starting at a lower principal, so your interest is then lower.
That's great to know.
Yeah, they don't want you to know that. They don't want you to know that.
Right.
But I'm telling you that you can do that.
Yeah, thanks. We'll try anything, right?
True.
Well, we talked about the whole minimum payment issue and why and the fact that it's so low. Generally speaking, it's anywhere from 1% to 2% of whatever your outstanding balance is. Right. And there's always a disclosure on your credit card statement that says, and right up front, if you make the minimum payment, this is how long it's going to take to pay it off, and this is how much interest you're going to pay. But people, I think, fail to realize that the APR on a lot of these cards is usually pretty high. I mean, it seems almost usurious.
Correct.
Yes, it does.
Can you tell us about that?
So I'll give you two thoughts. One is what you just said. When you sign that disclosure, reality says how many people really read the fine print? Not enough. That's the problem. The other challenge is, as far as I know, there is no maximum to the interest rate they can charge. I spoke to somebody last week who just got I won't tell you the name of the department store, but a department store credit card, and their interest rate was 37%.
Yeah, that's
yikes.
And that is insane. So how do you ever pay that off? And the answer is you can't. And that's what they want. They want the interest over time.
Right.
Well, that's how they make their money, but you have
Correct.
to pay it in full every month or don't use the card. That's
Correct.
my
Right.
advice to everybody.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. So look, and we're kind of running short on time here. So what if you are having financial challenges? What can be done with your credit card balances if you're having financial challenges?
Well, one thing is I would suggest, again, calling up the credit card company and asking to stop the interest for a certain period of time. That will help you bring it down.
What reason do you give them? Like, why should they stop that? What would I say?
You could say to them, I'm having challenges. I can either ask you to write it off, or you can accept payment against principal. In some cases, they're willing to say, you know what? Keep the principal, even though it's coming down, because they know once you start paying again, it's going to be minimum payment. They're going to go back to the interest. Yeah. So they don't necessarily want to write it down. The challenge, though, is if you do say, let's write it down, and they do, it impacts your credit scores, which then hurts you longer term. So you're really in a no-win. So the only real way to do that, I mean, again, there are multiple ways, but the only real way to do it in your best interest is to somehow find money to start paying it down faster.
Exactly.
Now, that could be stop using your cards. That could be get a second
family
income.
Loans. Yeah, family.
Right. I mean, there are ways. None of them are great options, but there's got to be a way to get yourself out of debt. And the key, the mindset is how to stay out of debt. That's the key. It's the mindset.
Well, that's all great information. Thank you, Steve, for sharing that, your insights on debt management for consumers. We appreciate that. Thanks for being a guest on Money Matters TV.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank my co-host, Robin Bond of Transition Strategies, and all the people behind the scenes that help make Money Matters TV such a great program. Most importantly, I want to thank you, our viewers, for showing up and watching our program. Be sure to tune in to the next show where Michelle Hirsch of Brunswick Private Client will be a guest. And until then, make it a great day and tune into Money Matters TV, where your money matters.